Okay, first thing I want to do is really discuss the project. And I will be there next week. We'll be holding class there next week. So I'll be there live with you for your presentations. And keep this in mind, I want about a 15 to 20-minute presentation. For those of you especially that have 4 in a group, which I think most of you do. And so you'll have to talk to each other and divide it up how you want to divide it up. But think things like maybe one can present of why you chose that to make that product, and then tell us something. Maybe one can tell of how you found the raw materials. You know, if you're doing a broom, how did you find the raw materials and where all did you look? Then explain the process to us with a couple of slides. Like if you're doing the sanitizer, explain the process that you would go through doing that. And then go over your spreadsheet, the cost and how you arrived at the end of the spreadsheet. You have to come up with all your costs, and then you have to arrive at your selling price. So keep in mind how much you want to make on it. If you want to make 35%, that's pretty good. Then do a couple slides on selling your product. What makes it so good? Why would your classmates pay more for your product if you're charging more? Or why is it better? So this is a big part of your grade. So I really want this project. I really want you to do a good job. So again, then you will turn in your paper, and of which it's 6 to 7 pages, but 3 or 4 of that is your spreadsheet. But then I want your personal opinion on how satisfied were you when you picked the product. You know, just give me your ideas on this project, and how cost, you know, how difficult it was to find materials or to find packaging or to do the labeling. So, but I want each of the papers to come from each of you. And that's pretty much it, I think. But make sure that you go back and read the directions, and the Excel spreadsheet, it'll load up. So all you have to do is fill in the numbers on it. But make sure that you go back and you include everything in the directions for that project, along with what I've just said about selling it. Of course, that's in the directions also. So, you know, in this, you're going to be covering overhead and materials costs, direct labor costs. So you're going to have to, you know, you'll use contribution margin to maybe come up with the price. And that, you know, it'd be good to figure out your break-even point. So, you know, how many brooms do you have to sell, or how many dishcloths do you have to sell, you know, to break even before you start making a profit and things like that. So I want you to use all the chapters that we've gone through to analyze that, with the exception of probably tonight. You won't use tonight's chapters because this is a wrap up accumulation of what we've discussed in this accounting throughout our course. So I'm going to take about 15-20 minutes, and I've got a couple little special projects for you to do tonight. So it's going to take a little more research and a little more thought tonight, but we're going to narrow this down into the basically Knoxville area, and that's what we're going to study tonight, is some manufacturers in the greater Knoxville area, say from Morristown to Lenore City to Anderson County in this big circle, what we call the Knoxville metropolitan area. And I did a paper on that and had it published years ago. I'm not going to tell you about the paper till the end, because it give away what I want you to do, and I want you to figure out what I'm doing as you're doing this project. But let's go over what we've been studying. In the first week, we talked about the two types of accounting, and we talked about financial, and we talked about managerial, and we talked that financial is much more structured, because you have to do it a certain way in order for you to submit reports to board of directors, to stakeholders, to lenders for tax purposes. But then we contrasted that to what we do in this accounting that you've had, that is called managerial, or some people call it cost accounting. And remember, the first thing we discussed was, what is managerial accounting? What's it used for? So we discussed that it was used for planning, controlling, and decision making. So we haven't done a lot. I told you we'd be leading up to that. So tonight we're actually going to be covering the last two, which is just a summarization of what we've been doing. But the last two of those, the controlling and decision making, is what we're going to do. And remember, I have to say this every time: you can't manage what you can't measure. So you have to have this information in order to make decisions. So how do we get that information? So we led up to it, and then we talked about cost and the different costs. And normally, if we were live, we would be discussing this, but it's just difficult back and forth in this situation. So I'm just going to lecture on it. But we talked about direct cost and indirect cost, and the things that I'm going over tonight are the things I want you to remember out of this course, because they're things you will use in the business world, especially if you get into manufacturing. But we had direct cost and indirect cost. Then in the second week, we broke it down even further. Manufacturing cost, we broke it down to direct materials, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead. And of course, the overhead was something that covers not necessarily the widget that you're manufacturing. You can put a price on the raw materials of the broom you're going to make, and you can put a price on the labor, but your overhead and electricity and all the other things it takes, and machinery, it's hard to put a cost on it. And so then we discussed product cost, and we discussed period costs. So you can assign those to a product. You can assign them to a different period or cost. It makes no difference, because the only reason that you're doing this record keeping for managerial accounting is to use for your own purposes. And then we discussed the variable cost and fixed costs, and the differential cost, for decision making. Then we got into discussing cost, volume, and profit, and you did homework on break-even point and your target analysis, and of the relationship between cost and volume. So, if the volume you're producing or selling goes up, your costs are going to go up. But there comes a point, that you have to make money. And then we talked about job order costing, So that was, we were measuring direct material cost and direct and indirect materials and labor costs per job. So the reason you would do that, if you're a manufacturer and you're manufacturing several different things, such as one of the manufacturers that one of you are going to study tonight, they manufacture, well, several of them do, manufacture different things. So in their accounting, they would want to know each job. So one of the things you're going to have to do when you go through these businesses that I assign you, you're going to have to decide, would they benefit from job order costing? You have to tell me that. Then we discussed income statements and cost of goods sold. And, then we discussed the variable costing and absorption costing, and trying to find some place to put selling and administrative expenses. And then activity-based costing, which we said that was a tool in decision making. We broke the costing down into the different activities that we're doing. Then we started putting all this together, and we studied differential analysis, and you did a little research on that, and you had homework on that. And what a differential, and I want you to know this, it's important, because you take this cost analysis that we've done. So we've studied how to do all these type of costs, and you'll be doing costing in your project, and do a differential analysis to decide which decision we want to make. Now, I expect you, in doing this project, maybe give me a report, do a differential analysis. So look at the cost involved of where you're buying your raw materials to make that broom or that living room chair. Look somewhere else, see if there is another alternative to where you can get it cheaper. So maybe look on Amazon, maybe look at Walmart, maybe go directly to a manufacturer, but do a differential analysis. If I buy it here, or also, what if I buy in quantity? You know, if they give quantity discounts, I can buy 10, but I can buy 100 and save 10%. You do that differential analysis and see if it's worth it when you're pricing your product. So when you're doing your project, please be sure that you look at some alternatives, different ways to save money. And you're only going to be doing this on a very small scale, but the principle is going to be the same. Then we got into 3 important chapters of budgeting. And you use budgeting quite a bit in decision making. So we talked about capital budgeting, and we talked about, you know, the different types of payback and master budgeting, and we talked about the budgeting, and of course that's budgeting is still all part of the first part of that, planning. So in your normal budget, it's a plan of what you think you want your product to be or how you want it to sell. Now you have to take into consideration, and you're going to do some of that tonight. You won't be doing it, but a lot of these big companies have to take into consideration, and I told you that from the beginning, your social responsibility. So, you know, they have to think about, what is my product doing to the environment? So, you know, lots of times they have to budget for things like that. And we talked about the advantages of a budget, and of course, even even in personal life, if you're having trouble with finances, it's always good to do a a budget, personal budget. So and you'll be doing sort of a little budget with your project, so that you'll come up with what you hope to make and all that. So after we got through with budgeting last week, we got to cover 2 other chapters, and that's putting together the information that we've done in these previous 6 weeks. It's putting it to use to measure and make decisions. So I'll go over just a part of that down, and after you make your presentation, now I'm going to go ahead and finish up the book. So when you make the presentations, we'll be through. So these new chapters, we're talking about a variance or a flexible budget. Now, does anyone know why you have a flexible budget? Well, let's say a regular budget is what you hope to expect. So that's a plan. So then what is a flexible budget? Okay, you start doing that after you get into your cycle, and it's an estimate of what should have been, of what you should be getting, what you should be doing, compared to what you planned. And that is called a variance. So your test, the 3rd test is on there today. So I think most of you have already taken the 2nd exam. So the 3rd one's on here today. You got till next Monday to finish it. So, but these variances are very important. So you look at it on one hand, you've got this budget, and I expected this amount of revenue, this amount of expenses. Over here on the other hand, after 3 months is done, I have this amount of revenue and this amount of expenses. Now, in a perfect world, those would balance. That's what accounting's all about. Balance sheet. But we're not in a perfect world. So if you look at your budget, and that's what normally is approved by the board of directors, and I will go back to my career as city manager to help explain this. So I presented a budget, and it had all sorts of revenue from taxes, from the state, from the federal government. Now, you know what, that didn't change a lot. But part of our budget, we also did water and sewer. So that, that changed a little bit of flexibility. But where I had to really watch these variances is on my expenditures. So let's say after 3 months, my revenue looks good in my police department, because I get money from the state and taxes every quarter. So it's paying for it. The money is coming in that I planned to come in. But we had a crime wave, and I had to pay a lot of police officers overtime, or we had a festival, I had to pay a lot of overtime. We had some things coming that I didn't plan for. So after 3 months, 25% of my revenue is okay. But what if I spent 40% of what I budgeted on expenditures, then I've got to make a decision. And that decision is I either have to bring in more revenue or I have to cut back on expenses. Can you see where that would be difficult? Like in just a situation I just told you, you know, you can't predict. Another prime example, I budgeted in our city, $250,000 for snow removal on the main roads to, you know, get rid of the snow when it snowed. We had a winter, it didn't snow. So I only spent about 40,000. I had 250,000 budgeted. When my audit goes into the state, I have to explain if that variance is more than 5%, either way, I have to explain it. Why do I have to explain it? Because I didn't do very good in controlling. Now, in certain situations, like I just mentioned, you know, there's no way to control. So lots of times you got to look at the bottom line, and bottom line, you know, in 32 years, I never went in the red. It was always a good budget. I always brought in more than I spent because I controlled it. So that's that second part. I made my budget. I made my plan. I controlled it. But in that controlling process, to control, you've got to do some decision making. So does everybody understand that concept? It's a pretty simple concept. It's easy to understand why you need to do this. But lots of times it's very, very difficult to get a handle on it, to control it. Especially, you know, if most people will look at the budget and do this analysis and this flexible budget and do these variances. You know, I actually, in my situation, since my council and mayor and council met every month, we analyzed it monthly. And of course, the sad thing about it, you had some people that did not understand a budget. And that's why when I started out in the beginning, I said, you'll either be a provider of information or a receiver of information. I was the provider. Unfortunately, I had some dumb receivers because they would ask silly questions like, well, our recreation budget shot, here it is September, and we've already spent half of our recreation budget. Why? Well, the pool's not open in October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May. I mean, you certain things you do spend. You used to ask, why is half of our insurance? Why we used up half of our insurance in July? I mean, they look at the financial statement and say, oh my gosh, we've used up 50% of our insurance. Well, David, it's prepaid, you know. Remember we and of course, we hadn't discussed that, but you know, in this class, in accounting, you discuss prepaid things. You know, that's an asset. I mean, you know, so budgets are not hard to understand, but when you're making your planning budget, you need to have a lot of good information using statistics and finance that you learn, anything dealing with the numbers. You know, when doing that planning budget, it's important to make it as transparent and as correct as possible. We talked about that from the beginning, that this information you provide, you know, it needs to be timely, accurate, transparent. But again, I can't stress enough, this is what all the things that we've discussed and the homework you've done, exams you've taken, and your project that you'll be working on is leading up to making decisions. Now, the biggest decision you'll have to make in your project is after you go through it and you get all your materials cost and your labor costs and all that, biggest decision you'll have to make is how much do I charge for it? So if you want to make 35%, which is almost a minimum to stay in business, and you add 35% onto that cost, and it looks so bad, you say nobody will buy it at this price, then you need to relook and say, you know, what can I do? What can I change? And remember, the fixed cost you cannot change. There's certain fixed costs that you cannot change. So you're worried about your variable costs. You know, that's why they're called variable. You can change them. So, but you must worry about, in these last two chapters, the flexible budgets and variances, because variances will kill you. And another reason, if you're making up a budget and you're working and your boss, you know, you're working in this, and you have to make the budget if you're the provider, and 6 months down the road, you're so far off base that he's going to say, this person didn't know what they were doing. And keep in mind, we talked about all sorts of budgets, departmentalized, sales budgets. I mean, or vice versa. You know, if you give it to him and the manager doesn't know what to do with it, then that's not going to look good on him. So if he doesn't know how to handle your budget, if you're making the budget, you provide the information to the best of your knowledge, and the manager has to make the decision. Hopefully you'll be the manager. Somebody will give you the budget. Then you have to look at it. You have to look at all these costs. You have to make the decision. Does that make sense? Okay, fun time. I want you to go on the internet and look up, just Google major employers in Knoxville. And that will cover the Knoxville metropolitan area. So we have a gentleman here in Knoxville that happens to work for one of the top two. So, but I want you to pick out, you know, you'll get a list. Don't go to the second page of the list or anything, but I want you to pick out and budget your time. We've been talking about budget, but I want you to take a half an hour and I want you to look at 5 different companies. Now, some of these, when you look at this list, has a link right to that company. Some just list the company and you'll have to Google the company separate. There's no link. But I want you to look at the financial aspect of these companies. So remember, we looked up balance sheets and we looked up social aspects. So I want you to look at that and look at their, when they talk about community or social aspects, that's what's important in today's world, along with the financial. Look for ethics. Look for the environment. Look at what they are doing. See what these companies have in common. Now, each group, I don't care which 5 you look up, but you look them up and do that. And I want you to take at least a half an hour to go through those companies. Then, after you've looked at 5 companies, I want group 1 to look up the company Denso, D-E-N-S-O. Group 2, I want you to look up ARC Automotive. Group 3, I want you to look up Eagle Bend, and you will probably have to go to their parent company, which is an international company called Magna, M-A-G-N-A. And group 4, I want you to look up Key, like a key, Safety Systems Incorporated, which will lead you to their parent company, hopefully. Now, I want you to do the same thing, except add a little bit to these group ones. I want you to look at each of these companies that you're doing in the group. I want you to look and see if they have a mission statement. All companies don't have a mission statement. I know some of these do. I've looked them up. I've studied it. But yeah, I want you to look at the same thing of these 4 companies that you've looked at the 5. Now, I don't want you to look at these. I want you to look at 5 different ones in these, and then in your group, you look at that one. But I want you to answer these questions when you make the presentation. What are their stands on the environment? What are their stands on ethics? What is their mission statement? Why is this company important to the Knoxville area? What could you find out about them financially? Could you find their balance sheet? Could you find their income statement? There's a reason that I'm having you do this, but you may not find them all. We will see. But I'll explain why I'm doing it this way once we come back. And look at their social responsibility. So look at, first of all, take a half hour, look at 5, any 5 off of that list. Look for financial and social responsibility, ethics, environment. Then tell me what they have in common. Or you think about what they have in common, because I want you to do the same thing for each of your companies and also answer what their mission statement is. Are they important to Knoxville area and why? What could you find out about them financially? And what could you find out about their social responsibility? So it's 20 minutes till 7. I want you to take at least a half an hour looking at 5 different companies, looking for what I told you to look for, and take another half hour on your own particular company. Group 1, Denso, DNSO, Group 2, ARC Automotive, Group 3, Eagle Bend, and Group 4, Key Safety Systems Incorporated. So let's say we'll report back at 15 minutes till 8 and start discussing. Okay, somebody from Group 4 come up and answer the questions and just give me some thoughts on what your group thought about the companies you looked at and all that good stuff.
I just talked about it. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so our company, when we looked them up, they're officially just closed in Knoxville, their office. We couldn't find any specific reason, but their office doesn't exist anymore in Knoxville. And so like, when the question was, is this company important for Knoxville, we said like, we actually don't know because there's no information. But then the big company, of course, they're huge. They have like 8 or 9 more offices in the US. And some of the environmental concerns that they eliminate the design and manufacture products that contain hazardous substance and some emissions of gas. And some of the ethics, they also place great value in a positive culture, and they based on the right attitude. They have proper training and awareness. They control everything inside, and their commitment to honesty and transparency. And some of their social responsibilities is that they conduct their business with a lot of respect to human rights, and they help like eliminate any abuse, child labor, slavery, any traffic and forced labor. And they respect human dignity begins in our daily interactions with each other, with our suppliers and customers. And their mission statement is, we strive to provide safety system solutions of the highest quality and reliability that allow the customers the design freedom and confidence to drive the next generation in mobility.
Okay, and the 5 companies we compared and looked at are like actually the Cultural and Tennessee Valley Authority, working at the University of Tennessee, then working at the Team Health, working at Pilot Flying J, and working at Regional Cinemas. And why we chose them is because they all have the headquarters in Knoxville. For the first, we looked at the Cultural of Tennessee Valley Authority, which industry they're in, in electric utility. They have a revenue of 11.6 billion. They have 8,000 employees. The headquarters, just said, is like in Knoxville. They say a culture of caring of people and the planet, but we actually didn't find an emission statement or anything like that. When we looked at the University of Tennessee, of course, industry is education. The revenue is like 3.1 billion. They have 8,500 employees. The headquarters as well in Knoxville. And what they bring to the community is like they create a lot of jobs. A lot of people move to Knoxville because of that. They spend the money there. Yeah. Then working at the Team Health, it's of course the healthcare industry. The revenue is 7.4 billion. They have 20,000 employees and the headquarters as well in Knoxville, and they provide healthcare service and to like all the people living there, like and working at Pilot Flying J, it's the transportation industry. We have the revenue of 21 billion. They have like 24,000 employees, and the headquarters as well in Tennessee. And then when we looked at Regional Cinemas, the entertainment industry, they're like the second biggest theater circle in the United States. And they have a revenue of 3.2 billion and more than 25,000 employees. And what do they provide to the communities? That they provide entertainment services and stuff like that. And what they all have in common is that the headquarters is in Knoxville. That's why we looked at them. That's it.
Okay, y'all did a very good job, very thorough on that. So one of the reasons I wanted you to look up this key safety systems is that they used to be in Knoxville, and of course they no longer are. And I was hoping that you would go on to the parent company, which you did. But I use this example as a prime example of company being here, and then the parent company had to make the decision to take them out of Knoxville. Now, do you have any ideas why they did that?
Well, we couldn't find anything online, but my guess would be they won't be profitable anymore in Knoxville.
Yeah, you couldn't find anything online. I was just wanting your opinion, but I think probably there could be a couple of reasons, and I don't know either, because I couldn't find out why they up and left. They seem to be successful, but Knoxville right now, there's a couple things with the COVID going on. There's a very much shortage of labor in the whole area. If you drive around, everybody's help wanted. We're hiring. So that could be a big thing, that they maybe couldn't get employees. It could have been that they just weren't making enough money to keep this open with all the overhead that they had. I don't know, but I picked this particular one, to show you that for some reason, and we don't know, that they just didn't keep this going because it was once a thriving part of the home, which was Joyson, and they're still a thriving company, as you found out. So I want to use this as an example in particular of the type of decision somebody had to make. So somebody at that home office had to make that decision. They were through in Knoxville, and they had to use accounting information and things that we've been discussing to do it. And of course, you know, I wanted you to look at some other companies, and then did you find out what primarily does the parent company make at Key Systems? Did you, or Key Safety?
Well, it says they're like a global leader in mobility safety, providing safety critical components, systems, and technology to cars.
There you go. You said the key word there. Just wanted to make sure you knew that. Okay.
Yeah.
You said the key word because we'll discuss that again in a minute. So very good. Very good. All right. Let's share from group 3, Eagle Bend.
So for the Eagle Bend Magna company, their mission statement is we're all workers partners in the business to achieve world-class manufacturing and deliver the highest products and the latest innovations to our customers. They, on the website, it seems like they have a sustainability, they're committed to sustainable operations, and it's said with innovative products and energy conscious manufacturer, we're fighting climate change to reduce global footprints. We found a lot of financial reports, and they update them annually, and they're all very easily accessible on the website. Also, they believe that the strong corporate governance practices are essential to fostering stakeholder trust and confidence, management accountability, and long-term shareholder value. At Knoxville, Eagle Bend Manufacturing, they have 700 employees. And other companies that we looked at, there are like 5 top companies, where was Regal Cinema, Pilot, the UTK, Tenova hospitals, and Dollarwood. And we compared this company's, Magnus company's commitment to donating $300,000 to American Red Cross for hurricane relief, as well as like Pilot also makes like a big emphasis on their website that they're giving back to education, veterans, and truck safety.
And what do they primarily deal with?
The automobile parts.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Okay.
Very good. Group 2.
We had a company, ACR Automotive. They manufacture automotive airbag inflators and provide energetic assemblies. We have multiple departments in the USA, but also in Asia, Europe, and South America. And they mainly manufacture in Mexico, China, Macedonia, because of cheaper manufacturing and labor costs.
Good point there. Remember that one.
Okay. And the mission statement was related to their core values, which are safety, people, commitment, integrity, and communication. They strive to be the premier independent inflator company in the world, and the customers benefit from the commitment to exceed expectations at every level. their stance on environment, they care for the planet and pay attention to environment while manufacturing their products. So for example, they have a hybrid inflator technology, which utilizes inert and environmentally friendly compressed gas. Furthermore, for the financial aspects, the only thing we could find was that they have an overall revenue of 521 million, and only the Knoxville department makes 53 million.97. They have 225 employees based in Knoxville. Furthermore, their social responsibility and ethics, when it comes to customers, they will provide them with high quality goods and services at fair prices and deal with them openly and honestly. With the employees, they will respect each other's privacy and treat each other with dignity and respect. And they, of course, provide a safe working environment. For the suppliers, they will deal fairly with suppliers and emphasize fair competition without discrimination or deception. Then why is it important to the Knox area? We found that 25% of the employees have attended the University of Tennessee. So actually they help employ people in the Knoxville area and first look at the UT to employ people of their own area. However, we also found that they were almost bankrupt already and failed to report crash information and test results as required by law. So I don't know how important they are right now for the Knoxville area. And that was it on ACR Motive.
Then the 5 companies. First, we start off with Team Health. They are a leading physician practice in the US based in Knoxville. They have 3.5 million revenue with 20,000 employees. Then the University of Tennessee. University is a public research university in Knoxville. The mission statement is to move forward the frontiers of human knowledge and enrich and elevate the citizens of the state of Tennessee, the nation, and the world. They have 2.5 billion revenue. Then the Tennessee Valley Authority. They have 2.3 billion revenue and 8,000 employees. Their mission is to make life better for the people of the Tennessee Valley through the integrated management of the regions and resources. Then Covenant Health.
Okay, I said, wanted to remember, we'll discuss this at the end, but one of the key things to remember, the key word you mentioned was cheap labor. So we'll get into that in a little minute. So very good. Let's hear from Group 1, Denzo. And if you see me with my phone, I'm not texting, I'm looking up your company as you speak. So I have Denzo's mission statement in front of me right now.
Yeah, our company was Denver Corporation. It was established in 1949, and the headquarters is still placed in Japan. But they have more than 23 subsidiaries in North America, one of them next to Maryville. And yeah, they are more or less focused on like travel experience, or more or less like they want to build a world where everyone else has equal access to travel, which means that they want to enabling people to travel where and when they please, and ensuring that they that the things they desire are delivered to them, and yeah, that everyone gains the same access to the travel experiences.
Yeah. So they are very much focused on sustainability. So they are, their target is achieving a 50% reduction in CO2 emissions and eventually become carbon neutral. And a few initiatives they use are so they are very much focused not only on the like sustainability and environment, as in CO2 emissions, but like also low poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality of education for all around the world, and objectives like that. And specific initiatives are training lean automation systems, making use of natural resources, and they are important for the Knoxville area because they are not only providing a lot of jobs for the residents here, but also are a big part of the where they play a big part in connecting the community and helping the community. So that's what makes them from Knoxville as well, for the area around us.
And we also looked up their social responsibilities, and more or less you could say that Denso conducts its business activities amid relationship with a diverse group of stakeholders. In order to build a sustainable society, and they refer to international standards and social responsibilities. Important parts like our shareholders, investors, employees, customers, business partners, and global and local communications. We also found out that it's important to Knoxville, as Darren already said, that they focus more or less on 4 areas like community, education, diversity, and environment. Environment is a really important point for them. And they are partnered with many organizations around the region to support these 4 elements.
So we decided to compare it to, we chose 3 other companies to compare it to, because there are like 3, in our opinion, 3 categories. So the first one is the state of Tennessee. Of course, it's a government institute, so it doesn't have as much of a revenue objective as the other companies. So we also couldn't find any specific statements regarding sustainability, or at least not for the environment. Of course, they care about the people they work for, the residents of Tennessee, but there wasn't much to be found on the environment. Then we chose Walmart. Of course, very big company. Has a lot of money, and is way more active in also advertising their sustainability actions, not only for the region but for the whole world. And then third company is Food City, which is pretty small compared to Walmart, and we couldn't find any objectives or views on sustainability from Food City. We think because they are a bit too small to really have an impact there, and especially compared to Walmart, they will not be as significant in their sustainability objectives.
Is that it?
Yeah.
And by the way, their mission statement is contributing to a better world by creating value together with a vision for the future.
Yeah, that's what I forgot to say, but that's what we
Very good. So let's, you guys through? Okay, good job. Good job. So let's discuss before we go a few of the key takeaways. The reason I wanted the first group to say car and the second to say auto, the 4 companies that I assigned you are all dealing with the automobile industry, and they all manufacture, they don't manufacture automobiles, they manufacture parts and pieces of cars. But I wanted you to, I published a paper several years ago on this area on the impact of the automobile industry, parts industry in particular, in the Knoxville greater area, which went from Maryville to Harriman to Oak Ridge, Anderson County to Maryville, in that big metropolitan area, as they called it. And you know, some of the reasons, one of the big reasons that somebody mentioned, and I said that was good, was cheap labor. Compared to where most of these places used to be, if they're going to be in the United States, they want to be somewhat in the South. A lot of the manufacturers was in what we call in the United States the Rust Belt. They were in Ohio, Michigan, Illinois, and the cost of living up there very much higher than the cost of living where we are. So that cheap labor was a key point and why they needed to be here. But one of the main reasons is that they more or less followed some manufacturing, or not manufacturing, but some assembly plants that are located within several hours driving. You know, and several hours you can be at a Toyota plant. Chattanooga, you can be at the Volkswagen plant. You can be at a Mercedes plant in Birmingham. You can be at a Nissan plant in Kentucky. Be at a Corvette plant in Kentucky. So you'll find these little parts type manufacturers scattered from Alabama, Knoxville, Memphis, and Western Kentucky. Bowling Green is what I was trying to think of. So you find a lot of those scattered, and they look for cheap labor, good climate. They look to Tennessee specifically, also with the Tennessee Valley Authority that we have, and one of you studied TVA. They looked at that, and we do have an abundant, inexpensive supply of electricity. So it's things like that, the close proximity to the assembly plants. For example, Eagle Bend sends a lot of their materials to just to Chattanooga, down to the Volkswagen plant. They do for Ford, they do for General Motors. So these companies are very, very much a part of the greater Knoxville area. Now, I'm glad a couple of you did the universities and the states. Here we were looking at the states, the largest employer, but one of the largest in Knoxville would be the University of Tennessee. They're considered state employees. But what was interesting, and I'm proud of you, you said you couldn't find anything on that they were doing on the environment or sustainability. And it's sad to say, I think they play an important role. I know they do with their scientists, and they work with these companies, but government doesn't have to do anything like that. Your companies like Eagle Bend or something, or Denso, if they destroy something big in the environment, they're going to pay till it could put them out of business. Whereas we all know government is never going to go out of business. And also, somebody pointed out one of the smaller companies they looked at, they couldn't find anything on that sustainability. So, you know, I don't want to say they get a free ride, but you know, little small companies, sometimes they aren't watched, but once you get up into the big time, somebody's always watching what you do. So the decisions that you make, you know, depend on whether you're going to sustain. And that's why I said when we started years ago, when I got my degree in accounting, there was no mention of social responsibility or environment or anything like it. It just wasn't there. It was strictly numbers. But I told you also the first week accounting that and it hadn't been that long ago, but that's why the first thing we did was study the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, because it changed the accounting world, ethics and then environment, so that people started watching these companies. They can't get by with what they used to. All they looked at was financial. That's not anymore. And I told you, my audit went from 20-some pages to 120-some pages because I had to put all this non-financial stuff in it. That still falls under accounting now. So we do have quantitative accounting. We have qualitative accounting. You have to be accountable, not only for the money, but for everything else that is involved. But I think it's good. I wish that we were face to face and we could discuss this more, other than you know, on a camera and a microphone. But you know, I understand it's just the way it has to be done. But getting back to that key safety systems, you know, somebody had to make a decision. They had to take this accounting information and make a decision. We don't want to be in Knoxville anymore. We can't be in Knoxville anymore. So, you know, we're going to move, even though we're a thriving company. So, so do you think these companies that you studied play a big impact on the financial situation of Knoxville? You know, what would happen if something happened drastically to the automobile industry, which when I was in accounting, they used to say is the big three go, General Motors and Ford and Chrysler. You know, if they're successful, the country's successful. So, you know, the thing about that I'm trying to get across in this decision making is, you know, you go out and you get in your car and you drive off, but you don't think about all the different jobs that are created just to make that automobile. And when we look at the big picture, it's very, very competitive. So that's why this accounting information is so competitive. There's got to be people at these places, these Denzos and Isons over there and Eagle Bend, that they look at these every day, and anything they can do to cut some kind of expense or come up with something to bring in more revenue, you know, they've got to do it to stay in business. Plus, then they've got to worry about their social responsibility to stay in business. So I hope that tonight tied this all together for you and gave you a bigger picture of what I was talking about with accounting. Normally people take an accounting class, students do, and they think it's all about numbers. This class was not very number driven. That's why I made your exams true, false, multiple choice. Didn't have to work a lot of problems because this is not that type of class in an MBA program. You get all that if you're going into accounting. You get all that in 6 or 7 more classes before this one. This class, I hope, succeeded in teaching you that managerial accounting is all about taking this information and making decisions. And it's how to use this information and how to make these decisions. I'm through for the evening. If I look forward to meeting with you next week. I'll be there, but if you have any questions or anything you need to know about the project, please text me or call me. You have my cell phone number, but lots of times I'm in meetings, can't answer, so text is the best way. And if you will text me, I will get right back with you if you have any questions. And if not, have a good evening.